So now we'll begin. My name is Chris Little, and this is Greg Hicks. And
Hey, Chris.
hi there. Welcome. We are coming to you live from the VTScada studio in Bedford, Nova Scotia, Canada, where most of our product development goes on for VTScada. And today, this is the latest in our ongoing VTScada webinar series. Often they focus on different forms of connectivity for various devices, but today we're going to spend another webinar talking about a new component and feature that was technically released in version 12, but we've actually been using for a while now, and that is centralized application configuration using master and subordinate applications. Well, that's me talking a lot. Greg, tell us a little bit about how long you've been here and what kinds of things that you do.
Well, I've been here a little over 10 years, and I'm a developer.
Right.
And what a developer is I develop the engine code.
Oh no, this way.
Sorry, we're mixed up. Yeah. I develop the engine code using C++, and I develop a lot of the VTScada code using VTScada script language.
Right.
And as a developer, my know-how is very, very deep in very few areas and very, very shallow in a great many areas.
Good. So we'll try to avoid the shallow parts. So today we're going to talk about master and subordinate applications, and basically for anyone who's familiar with VTScada, they've known that we've been making enormous SCADA applications for decades now. Even though a lot of our customers are small 1 and 2 server systems, really VTScada was designed from the ground up for large, massive industrial systems. And this master and subordinate applications is just another tool in that toolbox. This is not actually depreciating how we currently manage large applications. It's simply another option that has its benefits. So before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to try to do 30 minutes of solid content, and that'll all fall to our friend Greg here. At that point, after that, we are going to answer as many of your questions. We're going to answer all of your questions. So to do that, on your screen, on the right-hand side of your screen, there should be a dialogue. You might have to open it up with the little orange arrow in which there is a place to enter questions. So at any time, if you hear Greg say something and you have a question, then by all means enter it. It'll go into a queue, and at the 30-minute mark, I will start pitching them at Greg, and he will knock them all out of the park. Yes, this is being recorded. Yeah, I did check. It starts automatically. So this is being recorded. So everyone who has registered will receive a link automatically in an email that contains a link to the streamed recording, as well as all of the slides that Greg has created. Although we're going to spend a lot of time actually mucking around in VTScada and not in the PowerPoint. I think that's it. And then we'll talk a little bit at the end about VTScada Fest, which is coming up in March. So at this point, I'm going to hand the reins over to you, Greg.
Okay, well, let's get right into it. I'm going to make a quick run through a presentation here, but as Chris said, we're going to spend most of our time in VTScada showing you how master and subordinate applications work. And master and subordinate applications. So at its root, this particular feature is just another tool in your toolbox for partitioning designs. Particularly, we find that our largest customers really find this a useful way of taking your design and partitioning it appropriately. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what a master application can do and then what it can't do. So let's get right into it. First of all, a master application can use and has visibility into the tags and pages of a subordinate application. So if you have a master application, it can navigate into the tag structure using our tag browser of the tags in the subordinate application. It can perform some control actions affecting a subordinate application. So if you have an output widget in your application, you can have the output widget in the master application, have it refer to a tag in the subordinate application to, for example, write to an output on a device connected via the subordinate app. You can trend tags even on the same page in the master app from multiple subordinate applications. So for example, if you have an overview page in your master application, monitoring what's going on with multiple subordinate applications. You can see all those things in a summary application that lets you know in a glance what's going on everywhere. And lastly, with respect to alarms, in your master application, you can see the alarms in the alarm history. You can acknowledge those alarms from subordinate applications. You can shelve alarms, so you don't have to worry about them for a certain period of time, and you can see the history of the alarms. I think I just said that, didn't I?
It's good.
There are also some things you can't do with a master application. And a lot of these were design choices rather than any particular technical roadblock. But master application can't do alarm notification on behalf of a subordinate application. It's kind of a one riot, one ranger philosophy where the subordinate application can do its own alarm notification. So we don't want the master application to be able to do it. Similarly, sounding alarms from a subordinate application. You want the subordinate app to be able to sound the alarm, but if the master app was also sounding the alarm, you'd get an annoying heterodyning going on. And
it'd be an echo chamber of reverberating alarms.
Exactly, and it would be confusing as well as annoying. Another thing you can't do is you can't link a subordinate application's tag to a tag widget that was declared in the master application. It's a one-way relationship.
It's bottom up.
Exactly. The subordinate app doesn't know what's going on in the master app, as opposed to vice versa.
Right.
The other thing you can't do, and this is sometimes a point of confusion, is you can't have a subordinate application that's not running on the same machine as the master application. In order for the master application to have visibility into the tags and alarms and history of the subordinate app, that subordinate app has to be fundamentally there.
Right, I understand. And that's an important note about VTScada generally is that in a given instance of VTScada, you can run as many applications as you want to, as long as you don't exceed the IO tag count of your license.
Yeah. Another thing, and again, this was a design choice, you can't see the subordinate application of a subordinate application. Right. It's not turtles all the way down in this particular case. And that was, again, a design choice, partly to help us prevent having to do things like checking for circular references in subordinate applications, which would really be a bad thing. And lastly, you can't modify the tags in the subordinate application. Again, this just helps to avoid confusion on the part of the user. If you want to modify tags in an application, you go to that application, which is running on the same machine.
Gotcha.
So now that we've talked a little bit about what it can and can't do, let's talk a little bit about why we would want to do those things. And really what it comes down to is appropriate design partitioning. It may be convenient if you have a very, very large application to split that application up into smaller domain-oriented or site-oriented applications. But you still want to have an overview page, a central place where you coalesce all the information about your system as a whole. And the master subordinate idea helps us do that a little better, so that we have, for example, a single page where we might view trending for multiple applications with key indicators, perform control actions for multiple applications from a particular location, and trend tags simultaneously. That is the fundamental use case, but there are a couple of other use cases that are worth looking at. For example, subordinate applications can be lightweight wrappers for drivers. You might have a system that's got a very low tag count license that's only got a driver or a couple of drivers and nothing else in that application. And then the master application can have all the IO tags that reference that driver.
So that means that at your individual sites where you're running your subordinate applications, you could actually have cheaper, smaller tag licenses.
Exactly.
And then now the master application, this is a question I'm sure it's going to come up. In the master application, you are not duplicating the use of those tags against your tag license, because we charge per per IO tag in use in the application. That's counted towards your tag band, but this doesn't count twice, right?
Well, I mean, if you're using the tag in your master application, in the subordinate app under your master app, doesn't count twice on the same machine.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Right. But you would still have to have
better.
that subordinate application
Sure.
running and the tag associated with that driver running on the machine. It's just not counted twice on the same machine because that driver is not running in the master application. So one last use case. This is probably the most unlikely use case, but it's also something that you might want to consider. If you have a set of tags and pages that are used broadly across all your applications, and you want to avoid duplicating the logic and the tag cost across all those applications, you might, and a good example might be weather information.
Right.
Using
the JSON driver.
Using the JSON driver, you might want to put that in one small application and make that application a subordinate to each of your applications. And that would save you the cost of duplication and the cost of the additional tag licensing. So there's room for efficiencies in a couple of different directions. I mean, I'm a big one on reducing complexity, and anything that allows you to partition a design into fewer tags and fewer components, I'm in favor of. But in general, it helps us reduce the overall tag count in your system as well. So one point I want to drive home here is with this simple graphic, which is any subordinate application can have any number of master applications. Any master application can have any number of subordinate applications. There are no restrictions in that regard. And so again, it gives you a lot of flexibility when it comes to partitioning your systems design.
That's the part I didn't quite understand until fairly recently.
Yeah, it ends up being a fairly powerful aspect of master subordinate applications. So in summary, from the slide point of view, is that it's a useful tool for partitioning your system, particularly when you get into big systems. And we have, customers with hundreds of thousands of tags using master subordinate applications as a tool for partitioning their designs and doing it successfully, and quite happy with that concept as well.
Right.
And it's a useful tool for summarizing across those kinds of partitioned designs as well.
Gotcha.
So having said that,
we'll come back to this later.
Come back to this later.
So while we switch around here, I'll let Greg switch over to VTScada so we can start actually working with that. In the meanwhile, I'll just talk a little bit. I'll just remind folks, because we had a number of people who came late. Thanks, we appreciate you coming out. Yes, we are recording this, so you haven't missed anything. Everybody who signed up will actually get an automatic link to the recorded webinar, as well as all the slides. And also, if you have any questions during the webinar, we've already got one question, thanks, waiting in the queue. Just enter them using the interface in the top right-hand side of your screen, and we will answer all the questions.
All right, so here we have a master application. There's nothing special about a master application. You don't have to check any box to make it into a master application. It's just a design choice. And we're going to have 3 subordinate applications. I've already configured 2 of them. These indicators reference a couple of subordinate application tags. And what a subordinate application tag looks like.
This is our tag browser.
This is our tag browser. Is very simple. This is a tag config folder. The subordinate app, the name of this tag is going to be curly because the name of the subordinate application is curly. There's a list of all the applications in our system.
Because I'm in marketing, we have a ton of applications that could be running that aren't running right now.
But I'm going to select curly here, okay? And let's just go for reference and look at the curly application. This is the curly application. This is the overview page. It's basically flipping between 1 and 0, though it's not actually a digital here. That's just a time-based calculation I'm running for demonstration purposes. Let's go back to our master app. And again, this is a reference to that same tag. You can see that the properties is grayed out. I can't configure that tag from the master application. And also you will see, if I look under here, there's Calc 1, which is the tag that's represented by this spark line. If I go to the Idea Studio, I don't know if you're familiar with our Idea Studio, but it's a drag and drop interface. And I go to the properties here for this widget, you will see that I reference curly/calc1. Calc1 is the name of the tag in the subordinate application. Curly happens to be the name of the subordinate application tag in the master application.
So that way you know just by looking at that you're pulling data not from this application but from a subordinate.
Exactly.
Or scoping it.
Exactly. Now these indicators are green if the subordinate application is running and hooked up. There's Curly and there's Larry. This is an unlinked widget. So what's going on here is that we have an application called Mo that's not running. Let's start Mo up.
That was my favorite.
So who's the boss of Curly, Larry, and Mo? I never did figure that out. That's why I called it Master App instead of.
It's actually kind of an apt comparison.
App, but yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Here's Mo. You can see Mo is running a sine wave calculation as its demo. So let's go back to our master application. You'll notice that we're still doing nothing. This unlinked widget basically is generating a sawtooth. Again, if you're building an app, the sawtooth is just there to let you know that something is going on, but it's not linked. So
if you were to drag any meter onto the screen without attaching it to a tag, it would simply cycle up and down just to show you what it does.
Exactly, or another spark line like this one. It's just showing you that something's there and should be going on. But let's go to the Idea Studio and hook these up. No, just a sec. You know what?
Oh, we have to add it.
I don't have a tag called Mo. So we will come here and I will add a new child, subordinate application, Mo, and come to our settings. And there he is.
Well, you've already chosen it from a list of available applications on the computer.
Yes, I have.
Right. Easy as that.
Easy as that, I believe. Why does it still think it's an unlinked wing?
Well, I think you have to link it manually.
Oh yeah, I have to link the widget up. Right, let's go do that. Properties. So no tag selected here. And let's go and select Mo. Select. And you will see in the background that now it's showing us that that application is connected and running. So I don't want to do that. I want to hit OK.
So that's as simple as it is to take, that's all you need to do basically is you choose that application you create a new tag and then choose the application from a drop-down list, and then that basically you're done.
Right, I mean, create the subordinate application tag and that's it. I don't have to do anything to tell the master app it's a master app or to the subordinate app to tell it it's a subordinate app. That's just as simple as creating the appropriate tag. Now let's select the tag here.
Thank you, Lee. Lee says that Shemp is the master of the Three Stooges.
Thank you, Lee. That really helps.
So next time we do this, we'll name the master app Shemp.
We could do it right now, but we might run out of time. Okay, so I'm selecting a tag for that spark line. So you see we've got Mo here in the hierarchy, and we will select Calc 1 under Mo. And now we're actually showing the same data that's being generated by Mo. So basically, this is a very simple summary page of 3 different applications running underneath this master application. I'm going to move on now to sites and how they
so
behave.
basically what that means is what we just saw was that once you've added a subordinate application to a master application, the master application can then open up its tag browser and see all of the configured tags in the subordinate application.
Exactly.
As part 1.
As part 1. So you can use all of those tags in the
IDEA
Studio to draw new stuff and affect your graphics. So let's use Mo again, because Mo and I are buds. And I'll come to remote sites here. Now,
and by sites, this is our built-in Slippy Maps utility.
Yes, you can see I can move around, I can zoom out. You'll see that we have one site, imaginatively named Context 1, and there's its location. Curly and Larry also have one site. But if I go to the master application, which is here, and I go to the sites page for my master application, you'll see that there are automatically, and this is without any configuration other than adding those cool applications as a subordinate application. It is kind of cool, isn't it? You can see all 3 of those sites on the map, and you'll see they live quite close to each other in Bedford, Nova Scotia by coincidence. And if I look under Mo or Larry or Curly, I zoom into the individual site on that location. If I stop Mo, I'm going to stop Mo now. Come on.
There we go.
I'll see a couple of things in my master app. First of all, there are only 2 sites showing. There's still a Mo over on the left because we still have the subordinate application tag, but there's nothing under the application because it's not running. And similarly, if we go back to our overview page, you'll see that the indicator for the Mo application is turned off. So let's start Mo again.
I have to be careful. I'm crowding you out of the screen.
Yes.
Stay in my space.
We're left to right. We're left to right mirrored here, so
it's true.
You go this way when you want to go that way. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is alarms.
Should we look at just for quickly? Could we go to the tile page menu?
Oh yes, that's good. So we'll look under the page menu. And what Chris wants me to show you is the fact that under the page menu, we have 3 folders. These folders appear and disappear depending on whether or not the application is running. And we can use these to recurse into the page menu for each specific application. For example, this is the overview page on Larry. If we were looking directly at Larry, you'll see it's just called Overview. If we come back to the master app, you'll see that the overview is prefaced by the name of the application.
That's helpful.
So that yeah, it is helpful because otherwise you might get confused as to where you were.
Yeah, I don't think that was implemented yet when we had it at WEFTech. So yeah, that makes a big difference.
I think that's right. I did the pages thing after you were at WEFTech. What I would like to do is we'll give Larry a chance. We've been picking on Mo too much. Do something about alarms. So I'm going into the tag browser again, and I am going to add a test alarm. This is a roster tag. Rosters are part of our alarm notification system? Yes, thank you.
Which is a built-in, like other companies would use a third-party product for alarm notifications, like emails, text-to-speech over the phone, and ours is built-in. And a roster is a list of contacts that the alarm notification system would contact in order in the event of a high-level alarm.
I actually write most of the code for the alarm notification stuff, so this is what I'm most familiar with. So I'm going to draw this, not because we want to create a call out, but because it's a convenient way to create a test alarm. So there I am. I'm going to close our tag browser, close the Idea Studio. This little arrow up on the top left means go to the page we were just drawing, but we're already there anyway, so it doesn't matter that much. So we are in Larry. We are not in the master app. We're in the subordinate application called Larry, and I'm going to create a test alarm, which is an ad hoc alarm. There we go. Sorry about the noise, folks. Let's just turn that off.
Which is a privilege that you can deny operators.
Yes. But we are super users here, so we can do whatever we want. So if I go on the active list here, we'll see that we've got an active alarm called default callout off. Remember that because we're now going up to the master application. And you'll see that the master application has also got its alarm indicator flashing here. And if we go to the alarm page, we will see that it's got one active alarm. And if we look at the configured name, it's actually Larry/default callout off because it prefaces the name of the tag with the application name. If I come over here to the list of our alarm databases, every alarm event goes into an alarm database in the VTScada system.
And every application has an alarm and an event database built in by default.
Right, and in this case, system, down at the bottom of the list, we've got system event DB and system alarm DB. Those are the built-ins for the master application. If you look further up the list, in this case, because they're subordinate applications, we also have the same databases from Larry, Curly, and Mo. So we can filter on any of these if we choose to. We're not going to do that right now, just for confusion. But for example, can I? Yes, I can shelve this alarm.
I was going to ask if you could shelve something because it's cool.
So let me shelve this for 5 minutes, and it's gone. But if we go back to Larry, it's also gone here. So we can shelve alarms from the master application. So if I go to the shelved list, I'm going to unshelve it because that's not what we want to do right now.
A shelved alarm is one in which you know that the values are not going to be useful, so you will put it to sleep, as it were, for a period of time while you're replacing a PLC or whatnot. And during that time, it will still record each of the instances of the alarm, but it won't sound a distracting alarm.
Yeah, and or you're busy with something more important at the time, so you just shelve it until you can pay attention to it. If we come back to the history, we can see all the events that have happened, not just in this application, but in Larry, Curly, and Mo as they go through. So we've shelved the alarm, we've unshelved it. Let's acknowledge it from the master application. And you can see we can acknowledge that alarm from the master application. It's still on the active list, but it's no longer on the unactive list. And again, it's also on the history list as having been acknowledged. Now, as I said, it's been acknowledged, but it's still active. So let's go back here. And this time we'll use the page menu in the master application to go to visit Larry's overview page. We haven't been to this page via the master application since we changed it by adding the roster select button and the default alarm button. But you can see that they've been updated dynamically while we were elsewhere. So let's change this alarm from active to normal. And you'll note that we are doing this as a control action via the master application as opposed to the subordinate application. So There we go. And we're in the master app. Let's go back to the alarm page. It's no longer on the active list. And in fact, if we look at our history, it's gone normal. Again, you see it's referred to as Larry, default call it off. If we go back to Larry, again, no longer on the active list, and it's been acknowledged and then set to normal in the history. And I think that's about all that I actually wanted to show.
30 minutes on the nose.
Wow, am I good?
Yep. Thank
you, Chris.
So we've got a bunch of questions, so that's really great. And we might want to start at the bottom and work our way up, since one of them is with regards to shelving alarms, since we went there. When you shelve an alarm, are you able to add a comment to the alarm stating that stating what measures are being taken to resolve the issue? Do you want to handle that, or shall I?
All right, go ahead, Chris.
Yes, absolutely. You can do all that. Also, I want to point out, while I'm thinking of it, every time it goes by, I want to mention this. You'll see the options in shelving. You can choose the time frame. You can choose until a date. Now, this indefinitely part, you can add in the simple configurations module. You can go in and actually disable indefinitely. You can indefinitely disable indefinitely. So you can remove that as an option, which is, I think, quite a good idea. And you can also, not only can you, you have to enable this, it's not enabled by default, but you can require people to leave a note when you are shelving an alarm. Also, at any time, you can leave a note when doing anything with an alarm, and that note will become an encrypted, let's type in some gibberish, will become encrypted part of the history of this alarm forever. So you'll see this little icon over on the right saying it has a note, and then someone else can add a comment to that comment, and you get kind of a log.
Kind of a tree.
Yeah, that's right, a comment tree. And all of that is searchable, and you can view it from a separate database. And so not only can you require, can you make it possible to leave a note when you're shelving, you can require them to leave a note when you're shelving, and you can even require how many characters they have to enter. So they can't just go ABC or QWERTY or whatever.
Or ASDF.
Right, that's what I was trying to think of. So I hope that answers the question. Oh, and how do security controls apply in master and subordinate applications?
Basically, to be able to access subordinate applications from the master app, you have to use the subordinate applications credentials.
Right. So if I was logged into a master app and I didn't have credentials in the subordinate app, I would only see
what anyone would see with the logged off user.
Gotcha. From the subordinate app.
Right.
Gotcha. Let's go back to the top. I'm going to do a plant expansion. So we are planning to do a plant expansion with new SCADA hardware and VTScada screens. Great. I've been talking to support about how we could outsource the development to a contractor. Is this something that could help make that process easier? The process of having an integrator do this work for you. How does this help the life of an integrator? Could someone discuss what would be required? Well, that's a separate. So yeah, well, yes, we'll
that's kind of a business question, but I will say that an integrator is going to be a lot more familiar with configuring systems and building applications than somebody who has to learn all those things from scratch. Although there's value in being able to do it yourself as well.
Oh, absolutely. You should always, in case a meteor takes out your local integrator, it's always good to have some facility to do those things yourself. But in terms of whether the master and subordinate applications makes it easier for an integrator to do that kind of work, I think not necessarily. I think it is, in the sense that it makes it easier for everyone to do this work. It simplifies a number of things for an end user making these changes and for an integrator. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Are you able to structure or organize the page menu of subordinate applications within the master application? That's a good question.
Is our screen still live here? Because I can just answer that question directly on the application, on the master app.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, the short answer is yes. But But if we come to menus, you can see that under page menu, Curly, Larry, and Mo show up under the page menu, and the page menu for each of those is also displayed. Similarly, the menu item tags that we have can be used. For example, I can go new child, and I can come here to pages, and I can actually select a page from the master application directly. What's a good page? Where's Larry's overview? There we go, Larry's overview. Okay. Okay, so now if I come to my menu page, there's Larry's overview.
It's a good point, because as you like automatically, when you add a subordinate application, all of those folders of pages from the subordinate get dumped into your main menu of your master application, which isn't necessarily, as you can see here, things are getting quite full. So yes, you can, using using that menu, using the tag browser, you can go in and add and remove and streamline this into something more meaningful.
Yeah, obviously Larry's got to be running for you to be able to access that from your master application.
All right, and thank you. Shemp is the master of Curly.
Thank you, Lee.
The Three Stooges. How will accounts work between master and subordinate applications?
I think we've already addressed that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
When you shelve an alarm, are you able to add a comment? Yeah, we did that. And security, yep. A better wording to the question I asked regarding organizing the page menu. Are you able to organize the page menu in the master app of the, it makes it hard to see all the questions. Are you able to organize the page menu in the master app of the added subordinate applications?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of control over what order these folders show up in. So I'm going to say no if the idea is that what order you can put them in, but you can take any subset of these and, for example, pop them into a custom folder. You can modify the hierarchy without regard to whether it's in the master app or in a subordinate application.
So you could remove the, I'm pointing like you can see, I could, on this screen, we could remove the Curly the Curly, Larry, and Mo folders that were added by default and re-add the sub pages to this menu, the remaining menu, in whatever way we choose. But we can't necessarily change the order of things that appear under each of those subfolders.
I was going to say these folders, I can't change where they show up. They get populated and removed when the app starts and disappears.
So we couldn't create another folder and simply within the master application dump those three in there.
No, but we could dump references, menu item tags referring to pages from those subordinate apps into that new folder.
Okay, I see.
So that's kind of my one caveat. I'm not sure if I can change the order of these things in the menu item tags. It'd be worth experimenting with, though.
In terms of the ones that you bring up from the subordinate applications.
Yes,
I think you could put those. I think you could put those where you like.
I mean, I think we're impinging on one of those surprising holes in my knowledge.
Okay. No, we'll look into that and let everyone know. Moving on, when you. Can you discuss how the historians are set up for master versus subordinate? Can you store data in a master for X amount of time and then store data in the subordinate for Y amount of time?
No. The historical data is associated with the application that has the IO tag. So if the IO tag is in the subordinate application, then the history is stored with that subordinate application. If the IO tag is using a driver in a subordinate application, but the IO tag is in the master application, then the history will be stored with the master application.
So that prevents duplication of
exactly, and again, avoids confusion and obfuscation.
Gotcha.
It's wherever the IO tag is forever.
Does acknowledge alarms in master show as acknowledged in the subordinate?
I think we demonstrated that.
So
yes.
Yeah. For an operator's station that only uses the touchscreen, no mouse or keyboard, can you increase the size of the top bar to be appropriately selectable? And I'm pretty sure for a fingertip. So I think that's a question related to touchscreens and which can also include thin client touchscreens if you're using an iPad or whatnot. And I think the answer is you can. I think you're looking for there. You can increase the size of many things, like Greg's demonstrating. You can adjust, do day and night too. That's always cool. So Greg's demonstrating that you can increase the size of the text on standard pages. You can increase the spacing. You can do day and night mode. You can truncate the amount of information that you see, if so you're not just lost in a sea of words. But in terms of the main menu across the top, that is not something we've implemented yet. It's something that we talk about a lot, but there is a very long list of features and a very specific algorithm by which we, how many developers would you say we have working on VTScada right now? Over 30, I would think.
I think it's somewhere between 20 and 30. It's we have quite a collection in the UK as well.
Right.
And our engineering team sometimes gets seconded to development for projects as well, so it varies.
So the development never ends. We have a permanent core team of over 30 people between the two offices, and they're always adding features. And sometimes there's a pressing reason why we have to stop all the horses and change direction and get something done. But otherwise, we follow a very specific algorithm for the amount of need. So we're trying to close off the most important use cases. Certainly, as touchscreens and thin clients on iPads and things like that become more and more prevalent, that kind of thing will eventually.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we've got a lot of things we would like to do. That we have a list that gets triaged regularly in terms of new features. Bug fixes always take priority for us over new features.
As it should.
And so sometimes we know we should do something, but it's not high enough on the list to get done right away.
Yes, can you break it down further than master and subordinate to a master subordinate and then a subordinate of the subordinate?
No, you cannot. Well, you can, but the top master can't see the bottom subordinate.
So everybody can see one level below them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you could be any master app in between. And I think that's pretty much everything. Anything else? Well, while people are hopefully frantically typing in the last of their questions, I'm going to return to our PowerPoint presentation to show you the last couple of things. And from current slide. So these are the next upcoming webinars. The next one will be about, this is one that's been very important lately. We've always had customers who have purchased our 24/7 support during the hurricane season in Florida because it's literally unsafe to go to site. That the application is literally there to manage unsafe weather. But lately we've had some very dangerous, very tragic weather events going on in around the world, and we're going to talk about various features of VTScada that help you prepare for weather and then recover from, if necessary, after the fact. So that's going to be coming up next month. After that, we're going to talk about the BACnet driver, which is, so we go back to our connectivity series of various ways to connect to a variety. All of our drivers, by the way, since we've talked about them in a variety of ways, they're all not only built into VTScada in terms of they're installed with VTScada, but also they are all included in the base price. So that's an important thing to know. I think I saw some movement over here.
Yeah, there's another question down at the bottom.
Great information, thank you. Can you have access to all the tags in the master app?
Well, if you're in the subordinate application, you don't have any access to the master application at all.
So it's one way.
It's one way. But if you're in the master application, how much access you have is as with any VTScada application dependent on the privileges that the particular user has been granted.
Right.
So the answer is if you're a super user like we are,
right, or an operator who's been granted that permission,
we have access to all the tags.
Right. And you were saying that you can grant an operator permission to see a master application and a subset of the subordinate applications. So you could have an operator who's able to see site A but not site B.
Yes.
From the master application.
Yeah, potentially, depending on security and possibly realm area filtering.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. There's another question there.
Can you record data into the master app from the child apps? You mentioned earlier a master cannot have a subordinate application not running on the same machine. Does that just mean that you need to import the subordinate workstation to the master application and PC?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically to be able to access it on a particular machine, it's got to be running on that machine.
And that is accomplished through fairly basic VTScada magic.
I mean, generally our applications are redundant across as many servers as they need to be. And if you've got a master app running on a particular server in your network, all you would need to do would be to import it from another server if it's not already running on that machine. The
way redundancy usually works with VTScada, I think always works, is that every installation of VTScada has all the features built into it. So it's not, you don't have a separate historian, it's all one thing. So therefore, if you have two servers and you've got an application running on server A, then from server B, from VTScada, you can do what we call a get from workstation, where you reach across and pull in that application, and then you simply set your failover list, your server list, so that you know which one's the primary and which ones are the failover. And you can add as many redundant servers to that list as you want. So we don't limit the number of server failover with redundancy. You can have as many as you have VTScada licenses. So what that means in the case of master and subordinate applications is that you have to have done that first, so that you've got a synchronized application running between the PC running the master and the PC running the subordinate, before you can then import that subordinate into, import that application as a subordinate to the master. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
I'll hopefully that'll.
I mean, think of a scenario where your subordinate application is running on a secondary workstation and on your primary workstation, but you only need the master running on the primary.
Yes.
You can have your subordinate with its own server list running on both machines, but your master only running on the single machine.
That's a nice button to put on that. Can you?
Are we up with it?
I may have skipped one. It's so small. And I'm turning 50 this week. Which one I missed? Can you have data?
I should not laugh.
You mentioned a master. No, we did that one. If I have two runtime licenses.
Local to process areas.
If I have two runtime licenses local to two process areas, is there a way to integrate both those into a single master application, essentially collecting separate applications into, wait for it, into a single location for monitoring?
Certainly, that's what we've been talking about.
That's the A game, is it?
Yeah, I mean, you would have a couple of different choices. One would be to get a third license on a third workstation, and then have instances of both your two process areas running on that workstation along with a supervisory master application. Or you could probably just run a master application on one of those two runtime licenses. Mind you, you can't actually configure that master application with a runtime license. You would need an you would need a development license to make that work.
That's good to know. I think your redundancy, this is from the same person, I think your redundancy discussion just answered that. I would just make the remote runtime application redundant to an application on the master.
Yes, and we just said that again, and you just said it again.
So I'm sure,
I think we're multiply redundant here.
Excellent. I think it was certainly probably worth going through that many times. And thanks, Sam says. Great, thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
And I think that's pretty much everything. And so there's one more thing, and so you still have a moment to enter in another question if you want, and that is VTScada Fest, which I'm very much looking forward to because it is January in Nova Scotia. Coming up in March from the 5th to the 6th, there will be a VTScada users conference. So if you are someone who has been using VTScada for a long time and you've been using all the ease of use features, but you want to go a little deeper, you want to be a super user, this is a great way to do it. We'll have seminars, hands-on workshops. There's even going to be training happening. I think we might even still have some training seats in the days leading up to VTScada Fest. So you can go to our website and look at that now. Plus there'll be social events, opportunities to network. It was really great last year. I got to go, and it looks like we are actually starting to fill up. It's always a little bit like every year, but it's starting to really fill up. So if you're interested, go to our website, check it out, and we highly recommend that you do. It's a great way of, if you're evaluating VTScada, to get up and running quickly in terms of not only what the software is capable of and why the software works the way it does, but who's making this software. Greg, you're going to be there, right?
I'm going to be there, and you're going to be there as well.
There's going to be core engineers, there's going to be support people, there's going to be actual engineering, parts of our engineering team are going to be there, the developers, the head honchos, and a lot of the local salespeople. So you'll really get a sense of our corporate culture, which I think is something that really sets us apart. So I hope you can join us there, and we will send you an automatic link either tomorrow or the next day to this recorded webinar, as well as all these slides. Please take a moment and glance through it, and by all means, send that link to somebody else. If you think there's somebody who might be interested in this webinar, by all means, you can reuse that link as many times as you like. And there's a questionnaire. I promise we're almost done. Questionnaire coming up. As soon as you hit exit, it'll offer you to fill out a short questionnaire. We really appreciate your feedback. It really makes a difference when putting these things together. Do you have anything else to say?
I see there's another question from Randy, but it doesn't look like it's master subordinate related, and I'm not sure I know the answer in any case.
Okay, in that case, Randy, we will follow up with you specifically. So thank you everybody for your time. Thanks for staring at your screen for this long in the middle of your busy day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.